So, let's talk about imagination, the fourth pillar. I call it the landscape of imagination because, as in a landscape, you look out onto it. It's very difficult, this concept of imagination in our work. I think it's very difficult for us today because we're bombarded by images. They're everywhere. I mean, even here in London, when I go onto the tube and going up the escalator, there's images all the way on the wall as I go up, and they all move with me. The constant images on my smartphone, the images on my computer, they're absolutely everywhere. Advertising now has billboards, perhaps you could call them image boards, that move. We can't get away from these false images. They're not real images. Even cinema is a whole succession of separate little images that move very quickly, and you think, these people speak and they move just like us. And those images, wherever we get them from, those synthetic digital images, we're receiving them all the time. And that makes it very difficult for us to find the faculty, the muscle to build our own imaginations, not those that have been put into us from the outside. Now, of course, every image that you have is connected to the outside world. You imagine a tree, and that tree in some way is like the tree that you see in a park. So, in our work, there are two sorts of imaginations. I mean, with the four relationships to the air, you need imagination, but that's a sense imagination. Also, with the 6 directions of space, you need a sense imagination. So we have a sensation imagination and a sense imagination. But then when we get to our work, the first tickle that you have when you read a text, a poem, a scene that you're doing, or a whole play, the first little tickle that comes to you, begin with that and work with that. There's a very interesting exercise you can do. I mean, there's many different imagination exercises on a meditative level, but I'm talking about imagination connected to our profession. The first thing is to calm your number 2. To make it a blank page with nothing on it, because continually your inner life, your number 2, you're bringing up images again, those images that you've seen, the false images, we could say, the ones that have been created by technology. The other images are the memories that you have from your past, and then possibly those memories and pictures that will come about your future. So that's all part of the imaginative realm. We have imagination, sense imagination connected to the 4 relationships to the air and also the 6 directions. But then also you have those imaginations which are part of your inner life that I've just mentioned. So what do? You simply get your number 2 calm down. And the best exercise for that is the one in pillar number 1, which I call tuning the instrument, or the optimum position, or neutral gear. Go through those 6 directions, up, down, forward, back, and right and left. Toes, heels, left foot, right foot, ceiling, floor. And you'll notice that your number 2 will be calm and ready for other images to come. That's the first thing. The second interesting exercise that you can do at any time is this. Imagine after an event. For example, maybe you've left your house and you're going to a class, a studio. So just imagine from the beginning, from when you leave your front door to when you get to the studio door, imagine all of that in sequence, please. Then, once you've done that, I would suggest that you find a partner, another actor possibly, and relate that to them. They'll do the same thing and they'll relate back to you again, that whole experience. What you will notice is that when you're listening to them, or when you're relating that journey from front door to the door of the studio, you will notice that you'll be seeing the same images again when you're telling that person. The person who's listening will also begin to have images. Now, they won't be your images, but they'll be living within them nevertheless. Once you've gone through that process, I suggest then you fantasize. The big question is, what is the difference between fantasy and imagination? It's a very good question. You then introduce into this journey you've made, this imaginative journey. Maybe you're in a bus or you're walking the street to the studio door, and then you introduce a fantasy or imaginative element into it. For example, if you're sitting in a bus, the woman in front of you or the people getting into the bus may suddenly change. Suddenly there's a clown in their midst, or a dog, or a strange person's gone a bit crazy. And go with that imagination and see what it tells you. What you're doing then, you're actually inwardly creating a whole new muscle, an imaginative muscle. It's a very, very good exercise and a very simple one to do, because it relates to your own experience. And then within that experience, you introduce a fantasy element. And go with that. See what you do in that fantasy. Do you go and meet the clown? Maybe the clown has makeup, and the clown puts makeup on you, and then you put makeup on everyone else. And the whole bus goes on a particular fantasy journey. Who knows what may happen? Dialogue will certainly happen. Other people in this fantasy element will dialogue with you. Go with that. It builds this imaginative muscle, as I call it. It's very important. And they're your own images. They're not the images that have been put in by the false images, I call them, or fake images maybe, because they're not real, actually. They go in and they paralyze your own imaginative faculty. It's part of the work that really hasn't been developed. You know, we talk about psychological gesture and all that stuff. But the imaginative element really hasn't been completely gone into and developed. And I can understand why. We're living in an age where we're bombarded by not our own images. So I think read what Chekhov has to say about it. It's really very important. But also practice it yourself and practice it within your work. I talked about in the last episodes improvisation, and improvisation can be a great tool to develop this inner faculty of seeing things, of things dropping in. It's an element which is actually within all the work that we do, So, good luck with all of that, and I'll post another much later, because I think you have to come and have a workshop with me, and we'll go through that whole process. It takes time, and we have to be very patient with ourselves. It's a new faculty for us as human beings. It's another faculty where we can begin to cognize ourselves and the world very differently. It's the next step that we take as human beings to understand ourselves and the world, and for the world and nature to reveal its mysteries in an entirely different way. I just want to quote at the end what Einstein said. He said, logic or rational thinking will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. It's the next step for us to take, not into outer space, but to another inner space, which is just as real and even more real than this world we live in, the ordinary, every day, number 3. The faculty of imagination, the exercises that we do, will lead us into another number 3, which is, maybe it's got another number, I haven't worked that out yet, but it certainly enlivens, and we begin to see things that we normally don't see with our normal consciousness and the normal way we see things. Okay, good luck with it.